When I first started coaching down at Port Melbourne, Gary Ayres, as we know, he has a massive crowd that go and listen to him speak. And there's 3 other coaches, and the second biggest crowd would be me. And without a doubt, people will be coming over just to see whether this chick knows what she's talking about.
Well, St Kilda's AFLW coach Peta Searle has been good enough to join me on MCC Conversations today. Peter, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and I just want to say well done on the job on the draft the other night. It was a really good production.
Are you happy with the picks that you got?
Yes, certainly we are. We didn't have a great draft hand, but with the hand that we had, I thought we did really well with our picks.
I always find everyone's a winner on draft night anyway.
It's like the pre-season, everyone's always winning.
Everyone's flying.
Yeah.
Now we're at the G. I mean, this is the home of football. Where did your passion for footy start? Just take me back there.
My passion started with my parents down at Moorabbin, actually. Massive St Kilda supporter, so I used to go along in my bassinet, and I remember growing up there and sliding down the pillars and being carried around the boundary by the cops because I'd wander off and they would say, "Which kid's this?" And I'd be passed along. Maybe that's where my love of crowd surfing started. But I was brought into a Moorabbin family, St Kilda family, and has pretty well much lived and breathed footy ever since.
What is it like then now being at the St Kilda Football Club and being such an important part of it now too?
Yeah, it's a little bit surreal. I mean, when you walk the corridors and you look outside and you're looking across at the Oval, and you can reminisce and go, "Oh yeah, that's where our family used to stand all the time," or that's where my dad couldn't find his car every night after the social evenings and all sorts of things. So, it was a pivotal place for me. I was a bit of an awkward kid. I had a bit of a difficult background, and footy for me was always a place where I just felt that I belonged and I could really unleash my potential to grow as a human and to be able to, be responsible for inviting people back to Moorabbin and feeling connected to a place is really special.
That's why sport's so good, isn't it? Because it does give people a real sense of belonging and community. I mean, you played footy and then moved into coaching. When was it that you got bitten by that coaching bug?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I probably always knew it was in me. I was a phys ed teacher, so it kind of just followed suit, so to speak. But I was coaching a team at school, and it was a hockey team, and I don't really know much about hockey, but sport, a lot of principles are the same and so forth. And I had a girl that probably wasn't the greatest player, because everyone has to do it. So I just gave her a bit of advice about where to stand on the field, and I said, "Look, if you just stand here and the ball will come off the goalie's pad, so you can just put it in. You'll be there to put it in. You don't have to run around, you don't have to do much, just stand there and be patient and it will happen." And this kid who hadn't achieved at sport, in her whole life, she did that. She stood there and it ricocheted off and she put it in, and I remember that was the time because I was just so excited for her to be able to experience that and achieve that and feel really good about herself in that space. So, it was a really pivotal moment because right at that moment, that was more rewarding than where I was in my own current playing career. So I knew that was always going to be in me.
So you knew that was your calling. I mean, how has it been your first season as AFLW coach with St Kilda? How was that experience?
Oh, look, it's been a great ride. I think we prepared really well to give us a really good entry into the competition as an expansion side. You live and learn with everything that you do, so you have the good times and the not so good times. But we've really built a really good group of girls and really got the culture right and been supported by the hierarchy in terms of the CEO. And when I think about that game when we beat Melbourne, our first win, what a pivotal moment that was for the club. As a young side, we came back from a 5-day turnaround interstate against Adelaide to beat Melbourne, who really are a star-studded team, and just see the joy that it brought so many people, not just the fans, but the board of directors and then the families, the mums and dads of the players, and just to really soak up that moment. And even at the end of the night, the Moorabbin Social Club rooms it still continues on. But when all the players had left and it was just the staff that had worked the day and they're still chanting out the the St Kilda song, just to know what it meant for them. It was a really pivotal moment, and we just really hope that we go along to have more of those.
What was the biggest takeaway from your first season for you?
Oh, that's a good question. The biggest takeaway, and because it finished early, it was really rushed. It is a very quick season. Everything happens so quickly. So the greater the preparation beforehand, the better, which, I think we really, through our 2 years of the VFL season, did that. So it'll be interesting this year. It's just returned to train occurring now. But, I think we did a lot of things right, but we've all got to get better. The players got to get better, we've got to get better. We got the culture piece right. As a group, we want to drive greater standards going forward. We're really supportive of each other, but how do we hold each other accountable? Which can be a bit of a female trait, is we'd rather cuddle than say, hey, you need to do this a little bit better. So it's just about developing that within our group. And, we're currently doing that. Our leaders and myself are doing a leadership course with Hello's Consultancy, so we all keep growing in that space.
How have you been trying to stay connected as a group?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? At times we do it well, at times you feel a few people drifting. You've had to give people the space to deal with COVID in their own way too. Some people really need the connection, and some people just really need to almost go, hang on, I can't do this, I need my own space to get through. So it's a little bit about understanding what works for each individual. But the girls, they're a great group of girls. They're pretty funny, probably led by their head coach in that area. But they've been making like little quirky videos, and we've put them in groups where they've had challenges to do, and what that challenge could look like. Might have been a video, or at the moment they're now doing a riding. So they're riding for charity. So each group's recording how many kilometres they do and raising money for a charity, etc. So, I think they've been, we've developed, mentors. So the older ones are continually checking in on the younger ones. And so there's a range of different things going on. Obviously our head of wellbeing, Bernadette's been strong in engaging them in different spaces. We've got a couple of budding engineers, so being able to get them some work experience and doing something that they probably wouldn't have had time to do. So they've been able to do things like that. So, there's no one way and there's no right way, but there's certainly a variation of things that are going on.
I'm really fascinated by leadership. I read a lot of books on it and like to get people's perspectives and learn from a lot of people. What's your leadership philosophy?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't have a philosophy as such. I think I try and keep things pretty simple. We just did a 4D clarity, and it would say that I'm creative and innovative and got good intuition and so forth. And the feedback from my players is that I have a really good balance between making people feel relaxed and comfortable, because through humour, but being able to educate and sell a message, whether it's game plan or whether it's standards or driving a certain piece that we need to drive. So, that's positive feedback. But I think for me, the biggest thing is you've got to understand yourself and then understand your people. We lead people, we don't lead programs. And I think at times it can be often flipped. So, and it's not just about building relationships. A lot of leadership's about, you've got to build strong relationships. But I think it goes deeper than that. It goes about, well, it's not just the relationship you have, but it's understanding the world that your player lives in. What are their barriers that's, I guess, stopping them to achieve their potential? And they might not even know because they're young. But, you've got the more experience being older, and I guess, just having life experience, that, what are the structural barriers that are in their way? And how can you help support them through that, or how can you remove them? And you might not even have that conversation, but it's just awareness, I guess, of the greater picture around them, to help them to reach their potential.
And you're always evolving as a leader. I mean, is there an area that you've identified in yourself that you're like, oh, I'd like to have a little bit more of that attribute, or I could do that a little bit better?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, Jamie Cox and myself, we run the women's program, and this is for the MCC, so they all should know who Jamie is. But he describes me as the iron fist with a velvet glove. So, you know, that I know when to cuddle, but I know when to draw the line and create boundaries, etc. But look, you know, I think my 4D thing says that I'm extremely caring, but I probably could be a bit more compassionate because I'm so self-driven myself. It's understanding what that looks like in different people and how that's portrayed in different people, I think needs to grow. I tend to think it's, you know, all about work ethic and getting to work, but other people might think, well, you know, their ability to drive a situation may look a little bit differently. So it's about understanding that a little bit more. I guess, like, I'd like to become a lot more, I think I'm strategic because I'm a coach, and I'm probably strategic because, you know, I've lasted 6 years in an AFL club, so as a female, so you don't get that without, you know, going about it in a strategic way. But, you know, I think for my growth is I'd like to grow in terms of, well, what does it look like at the next level? You know, how do you get to an executive level? So what's the planning around that, so to speak? I mean, you know, I went for a job not so long ago, and it was about people and culture. And while I haven't done a degree in it, so I don't have the theory, I was able to give examples of all the criteria and my practicality. So I guess for me, it's just filling those blind spots in the holes about, I guess, I've always gone on intuition. So what are the theories behind it is probably something that I could grow in.
You mentioned being at the Saints for 6 years. You started there as an assistant coach with the men's side, but it took you a while to get that. And when we look at your coaching resume, I mean, 5 flags that you coached in a row with Darebin, all the credentials are there. Why did it take you so long to take that next step? And when you reflect now, do you think it's purely because you're a female?
Yeah, probably. Yep, definitely. Look, and the fact was the 5 flags that I've won, you appreciate it, but there's still a lot of people that don't appreciate it because it was done with females in a different league. It wasn't done, you know, with males at an AFL level or a VFL level, etc. So, you know, I guess there's a bit of judgment around what that looks like and how important that is. But to me, it's important to all those girls that I coached throughout that process. It's important, and I don't think we can underestimate it because it's the most powerful standalone women's club in Victoria. So, you know, it's gone on to create a lot of positive influence on people.
Oh, it certainly has. When was that moment where it changed for you? And tell me a little bit about your relationship with Gary Ayres.
Yeah, so I'm a person who's always about continual improvement. And, you know, Asta O'Connor's probably pointed that out when I've asked her, well, you know, what type of leader do you think I am? She goes, you're all about continual improvement. And for me, it was, you know, we'd won 5 flags in a row. We hadn't lost a game for 3 years. So, you know, it was pretty comfortable for me to stay there. And I got a phone call from Spotswood Footy Club, you know, asking me to potentially apply for the coaching job there. That's a men's club around the corner from my house. And I say that in that the coach that was coaching said, look, I can't do it anymore. I think you'd be a good candidate. So I put in my CV, but you know, I knew I wasn't going to get it because I'd heard on you know, things happen and you hear that the job's already been appointed. But I thought, if I don't put in my CV, like, I know it's not going to happen because it's already been delegated. But if I don't do it, the conversation at board level is never going to happen. And while it's not going to happen for me, at least it's starting the conversations, and it could happen for someone else. So I put in my CV, and then I got the phone call saying, look, it's a really strong application, but honestly, we're just probably not comfortable in going with a female at this stage, but appreciated their honesty. And then they said, but you know, we know someone at Western Jets, so can you do you mind if we put in your CV? And then 2 weeks later, I was working at the Western Jets. So whilst I knew nothing was going to happen there, by doing nothing, nothing changes. So I still asked the question, and then I ended up at the Western Jets, and because I was then in a male system, I was lucky enough to be able to be doing a level 3 course in which Gary Ayres was a part of. So, and that was quite a hectic time. I was a single mother with 2 young kids at that stage. I'd never been away from my kids for more than 2 nights, and this was a 6-day living course with 30 AFL, ex-players, coaches. It was a year that Geelong won, and they had 6 of their coaches there, and so, it was intimidating to say the least, yeah. But, I went in with a bit of a game plan to not to be intimidated and to talk up, but not to over-talk, because you've got to get that balance right. So, but it was in that place that, that Gary and I struck a pretty good relationship, and then he had an opportunity to present at his club, and, he went through the process. We interviewed other people, and in the end he chose me. So, and it took someone like him with so much respect in the AFL community to take the leap of faith, so to speak. I guess to put me on the map and the journey to where I am now.
I mean, when I think of a coach, I don't think genders. I think a coach is a coach, and there's a special set of skills that are required to make a good coach, and it's got nothing to do whether you're male or female. But I'm not so sure that the rest of society is totally on board with that at this point. You've coached men, women, boys, girls. Is there a different way that you have to, I guess, tailor things depending on gender? And also further to that, are there different skills that you see different gendered leaders having as well?
Yeah, so I myself don't change in the way that I am. I'm pretty authentic as a leader, but you're coaching people, and that can look different within a particular group of the same genders, and it can look different with different genders. But I do think that leadership within different genders is something that is worth talking about. And there's a slide where it's going to be showing up, and there's the first slide where I guess there's the head and a hierarchical system, and then there's a second slide where there's lots of bodies and they're all connected. And if I was to ask a group of people, if you had to put male or female to one or other of those slides, which one would it be? And everyone always says, the hierarchical one, men, and the one with all the tentacles, women. So, it's been a great question of mine over the last 4 years is, why do we put male hierarchical leadership into women's sport? Because men get their self-worth from where they are in the hierarchy, and women get their energy and their buzz and their self-worth through all the connections that they make with people. So leadership should look different in genders, basically on I guess how they connect with each other. And because of that, at St Kilda, we've changed the leadership philosophy for our female side. We've created more of a shared leadership model where there's a group of captains, and then we have leaders as well. And that took a little bit of convincing of the board, because it's a different structure in a 150-year-old model. But to St Kilda's credit, they're very open-minded to anything that I put forward. They trust that I understand coaching. They trust that I understand coaching women, but they just like to know the why. And once they've got their head around the why, they're pretty supportive. So, we're pretty comfortable where our leadership model sits for our female side at St Kilda Footy Club.
Did you ever have to, or did you ever feel that you have to go that little bit extra, work a little bit harder to prove yourself that you actually know what you're talking about when you are coaching men?
Oh, absolutely. And I probably got wrapped up in that too early. When I first started coaching down at Port Melbourne, Gary Ayres, as we know, he has a massive crowd that go and listen to him speak. And there's 3 other coaches, and the second biggest crowd would be me. And without a doubt, people will be coming over just to see whether this chick knows what she's talking about, so to speak. So, you did get a little bit, okay, I've got to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. But, I had a bit of a chat with one of the players, and, he just said, just be yourself. Trust what you're doing, be yourself. We trust you. And, and ever since that time, I stopped worrying about what other people think, whether I was good enough to do it or not. And as long as I was servicing my players, that's what it's about. Servicing your players, making sure you're doing the best job for them, making sure that they've got all the information they need to grow and get better. And so that's what I do. I just really limit my vision to that and not worry about whether people think I can or can't do it. I guess the biggest critic is myself. I probably do work harder because 6 years down the track and I'm now the only AFL female coaching AFLW, so we haven't progressed where we should have. So I do put pressure in myself to succeed, to make sure that, because I've got to succeed. I think I've got to succeed to make way for others.
Well, how do we do that? Because we had Beck Goddard obviously on the premiership with the Adelaide Crows the first year in the AFLW competition. Michelle Cowan was obviously coach at Fremantle. Neither of them were able to continue on in their roles for varying reasons, work being one of them with Beck. How do we change this? Is it about the next generation, like the Alicia Evers and the Erin Phillips and those girls who are currently playing still at AFLW level and a pathway for them? But how do we have more females in these coaching roles?
Yeah, I do think it will happen with the pathway of these people coming through. But I do think we need to support them in a way that enables them to succeed and not throw them in the deep end straight away. Coaching's more than just game plan, skill, it's so much greater than that. You're dealing with people's personalities, you're dealing with stakeholders, you're dealing with the board, you're dealing with sponsors. Like, you're holding a lot for a lot of people, not just what happens, on game day. And that's a little bit that concerns me and worries me around that is how do we grow them in that area and support them in that area, because I have no doubt that, their ability to actually see the game and coach the games there, but what else does leading a team actually look like? So I think there needs to be some steps put in place to ensure that they're supported so they can succeed in a full capacity, not just in a certain area. In terms of, I guess, what's happened now, it is frustrating with Beck and Michelle. It's quite sad to an extent, and it's about understanding the people. So what do they need to be able to succeed, rather than they can't succeed because of work, or they can't succeed because of other things, whether it's the kids, or because, as women, we're going to be dealing with this our whole life. So having an understanding club environment boss leader that, can do the best to help. They can never take the barriers away, but they can actually make it easier for you to achieve. And I think, Matt Finnis has certainly done that for me at the Saints. His ability to understand people for a leader is exceptional. But that still doesn't mean that there's still a lot of barriers, and it's still, that it's not as hard for me as it is for the guys. But just knowing that he appreciates and understands, I guess, the other things you've got to juggle to get it done.
I was listening to one of the great sporting coaches in Lisa Alexander, obviously the Australian Diamonds and netball connection there. I was listening to her on radio a few weeks ago, and she was actually talking about this idea that it would be great to have a female coach an AFL men's side, and ultimately that would be something that would require a big leap of faith. Do you think that footy fans are ready to embrace something like that?
I think footy fans are. I think society are. Do I think the AFL are? Not quite yet. The people within the bodies at the moment probably don't have that leap of faith or trust at the moment. But and it's been like that my whole way through. When I went to the Western Jets, the players were great. When I went to VFL, players are great. And families have always been supportive. It's the blockers never come from fans or I don't want a female coaching my son or anything like that. I think the opposite happens. There's almost a wow factor, the fact that, gee, you must be good to be here, type of thing. So, but there's still a long way to go in terms of, the problem is men are making decisions about women rather than women making decisions for women.
Would that be something that you'd like to do one day?
Coach
an AFL men's team?
It's funny you say that, because probably a few years ago I would have said yes. But now I don't. I don't, I'd like to build our AFLW competition to be of equal standard to the guys in terms of, full-time, etc. To me, I think I'd get more value out of that because your ability to influence so many women is greater than your ability to influence guys. Guys have been doing it for years, so to have a platform where I can actually make the world better for women would be way better.
Well, thank you for all that you've been doing for women, and in particular in the leadership space and in AFLW and football terms. It's been fantastic to have someone like you in the industry, and thank you for joining us on MCC Conversations.
All right, thank you.